Clare Fianna Fáil TD and Minister of State Timmy Dooley will spend this St Patrick's Day representing the Irish Government in Canada as part of the government's global St Patrick's Day programme, which sees ministers in more than 50 countries promoting Ireland's economy, trade links and diaspora connections. The Tulla-based Minister is attending a series of official events across Western Canada. I spoke with Minister Dooley earlier about his busy few days of engagements celebrating Irish culture while also strengthening economic and political ties between Ireland and Canada, as well as the Taoiseach's trip to the White House and other matters of importance.
The Irish government for many years have developed connections right around the world, so they send ministers at this time of the year to attend various events. And it used to be just for Patrick's Day and, a day or two around it. But in Canada, the Canadian government has designated the month of March as Irish Heritage Month. So it provided an opportunity for me, on behalf of the government, to get out, as you said, to Western Canada, visit, in the first instance, Irish communities through their various different societies and associations. And they host events where they bring, people who have Irish heritage together. But interestingly, I've seen on this occasion very many young Irish graduates and people who have decided that they'd like to spend some time in Canada under a 2-year visa programme. Some to further education, some to get considerable work experience, and others to just get a different life experience. So certainly around Vancouver, there seems to be a very significant number of young Irish. In fact, quite a number from County Clare. I bumped into a couple of young women from Tulla last night, a man from Newmarket, a fellow from Crusheen, a fellow from Shannon, and I know there was some people from Clare there at that event as well. So you can see where people are broadening their wings. They're part of a visa program. They're making a decision themselves that they want to go and experience something different. Some would say it's a kind of a counterpole to others who go and visit Canada. But many of them wanting to come back, when they have their 2-year stint done with greater experience, develop some new skills and had that experience of travelling in the early part of their lives. And then, of course, a considerable part of the engagement, as I said, is with those Irish communities, but also meeting with universities and research institutions who are developing technologies and new ways of doing things that we can look at from an Irish perspective. So there are a number of the universities here in Western Canada that have research programs in collaboration with UL and with TUS, met with them and encouraged the continuation of those links, always where, collaboration and research takes place between institutions, quite so far apart, particularly in areas of agriculture. One of the universities 2 days ago where they're developing new programs about better use of nutrients in the soil, better management of slurry, and better ways of reducing the CO2 output from agriculture. So those are exciting developments that both Teagasc at home and some of our colleges and universities are working on. Then, of course, working with both the IDA and Enterprise Ireland, where they would have a number of companies identified here that would have potential to scale and perhaps come to Ireland as a base to gain market access to the European Union. And then with Enterprise Ireland assisting with companies over here who might use Irish technology. I was with the City of Vancouver who have signed a purchase order with a company up in County Louth who produce road sweepers and snow ploughs, obviously for the worldwide market. But they have signed a significant deal and want to continue to do that. So you see both from, I suppose, people who have moved here, the research opportunities with universities, and then the commercial piece of that, where Irish companies are exporting into Canada and, opportunities for Canadian companies to base themselves in Ireland. We're trying to assist the IDA with that. And I'll be visiting the first O'Neill's sports store to open in Vancouver, and that's obviously an indication how strong the links are, and we see so many young people here involved in the GA. I met with some of the GA representatives yesterday as well and listened to their plans for the development of the organisation here.
OK, so you're kept going anyway, but sounds of it, and touching base with the Clare and wider Irish diaspora, as well as the many Canadians who claim Irish ancestry. And of course, the main focus on Tuesday will be Washington DC and Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach, who will be there at the White House for the traditional St Patrick's Day engagement. Of course, it is one that there's a lot of focus on. Some people, given the conflict in Iran, involving Iran and the US and Israel, questioning whether it's appropriate, given the current global tensions. Obviously, the government will feel it's important to continue the links with the US from a number of different reasons. What's your view on that particular debate? And the word minefield is the word that I've seen used quite often in terms of Micheál Martin's impending visit to the White House.
Yeah, I think we have to step back a little bit and recognise the very significant historical connection between Ireland and the United States and the importance in maintaining that link with the American people generally, but also those that have an Irish heritage. It has been a very significant bond of friendship that has shown great support to Irish communities. So no different to my presence in Canada, the Taoiseach's presence in Washington is a signal of the continuation of that bond of friendship and connection and connectivity. And Irish people across the United States will celebrate on Tuesday St. Patrick's Day and will on days in and around it. And for them, the Prime Minister, Taoiseach of the country where they claim a connection to be present in the state's capital of Washington on Tuesday is a very significant event for them. There are so many positives from it. Will it be a difficult engagement with President Trump? Always when the Taoiseach meets with presidents around the world, there are issues that we will have differences with them on, or that the Taoiseach will have differences on them. But that shouldn't get in the way of celebrating that very significant relationship that exists. It's the office that President Trump holds that's being celebrated here. And of course, there are policy issues that the American government have engaged in that, from an Irish perspective, we wouldn't necessarily agree with. And we have significant issues around what happened in Palestine, in the support of the Israeli regime there. The Irish government has spoken out very strongly against that, as the Taoiseach has. The Taoiseach has indicated the necessity to move on now from what has happened in Iran towards discussions, negotiations, and bring about a cessation of the attacks there. That's the right thing to do. Of course, the Taoiseach will have issues around the tariff regime that President Trump has followed and engaged with, which has the potential to impact negatively. But you've got to work with the President. The notion of not attending, in my view, would be wrong.
But can I ask you, Timmy, how does the Taoiseach navigate all these different strands and the difficult waters of this engagement? From, obviously, as you say, has to put his best foot forward in terms of Americans with Irish links, but also for us Irish back here, represent us and the strong feeling on those issues, the tariffs, Gaza, Iran, express our views to the point where it doesn't engage into a Vladimir Zelensky style berating or dressing down from Donald Trump, but at the same time not to be seen, Micheál Martin not to be seen, and Ireland on the world stage not to be seen as looking meek and weak.
And I think you in situations like that, diplomacy requires you to be in a position to set out your stall, your understanding of issues, your concerns, and what matters to you. But in the first instance, President Trump is elected by the American people, democratically elected by them. And no leader should go and seek to lecture another country about, the political person that they have at the top and follow it through. So America will have their own interests, and they have their own interest in the Middle East. They have their own interests with Israel. It's right and appropriate that other countries express their views, and that's the correct thing to do. But it's not about getting into a lecturing situation. And the Taoiseach is very good at negotiating difficult situations. He has a lot of experience as a diplomat over his lifetime. He has served in the Department of Foreign Affairs. He's been Taoiseach, he's been Taoiseach. So he knows how to handle these issues, and he knows how to delicately address issues without getting into lecturing or hectoring. It can be very easy to just take a very standoff approach and not engage. That's not the Taoiseach style. I have no doubt that he'll serve us extremely well, as he always has in those circumstances.
We do have to leave it there. Timmy, thank you so much for joining us from Canada.
Thank you very much.
And that was Timmy Dooley, who I spoke with a little earlier on. And for more focus on the Taoiseach's visit to the White House, I'm joined on the line now by the Shannon Sinn Féin TD, Donna McGettigan. Donna, good morning to you.
Good morning, Alan. Good morning, listeners.
So, a big visit for Micheál Martin, and I'm sure he has his concerns as to how it will go, as we all do. What exactly are yours or Sinn Féin's concerns, but maybe more broadly, issues with the Taoiseach's visit to the White House?
Well, we know it's a difficult decision given what has happened in the past 12 months. But this is not a time for all these smiley, happy pictures when what we see is happening here in the last 12 months needs to be clearly set out. And the Taoiseach has to set out a very clear purpose on what it means for Ireland back here, what our neutrality and what our commitment to international law means. You know, coming across with when people here are struggling, particularly what's happening with the price of with the war and the price of petrol and oil, and people are struggling here. They don't want to see big, happy, smiley pictures. We do understand that the relationship between Ireland and America, it will endure any changes politically, and we know that the ties are strong and they're very important. And Sinn Féin itself is deep and enduring bonds, and these go back decades, and they're going to remain constant. Leaders will come and go, but that will remain constant. We do have to be cognizant of that fact. But we can't have it where it's just all happy-go-lucky shindigs and photo ops. It has to have a clear purpose.
Yeah, and as you say, look, people are struggling, particularly at the moment with the price of fuel and so on. But is there potential for them to struggle even more if the Taoiseach goes into the White House, starts the finger wagging and lecturing, as Timmy mentioned, with Donald Trump over all these various issues, and that harms us economically? We've heard some former diplomats say that confronting the US President in the Oval Office be like a red rag to a bull and could damage Ireland's interests, particularly from an economic perspective. I mean, how do you balance standing up for Ireland's values with protecting those relationships?
It's not about lecturing. It's just about setting out very clear what Ireland, what we feel in this, what our commitment is, what our neutrality is very important to the Irish people. So it's not about lecturing, but he needs to be clear on what Irish stands for, and he needs to stand up and say that. To go over and just shake hands and hand over the shamrock and pretend everything's happy, that's not the way it works. And we know that the way Trump works it, he could do anything today, he could do anything tomorrow. You could go over there and bend the knee and he still might. You just don't know. Is that
exactly why Micheál Martin needs to be careful? Because you don't know what Donald Trump will do from one moment to the next. You also don't know how he will react from one moment to the next. And even if not going up the upper end of the scale and lecturing, to even highlight some of these issues might risk a very terrible response for Micheál Martin. Would it be better for him to talk about these issues behind closed doors with Donald Trump, but in front of the cameras take a more softly approach?
Well, I think that the people here need to see it. This is what people are calling for. They're calling for him to stand up for us. He is our leader, and that's what he's meant to do. He's meant to go over and he's meant to stand up for us. Like as I said, these relationships will endure, whether Trump stays or not. They'll endure, and the ties between the people of Ireland and the United States, they are important, as you say. But these will remain constant. The Irish in America will have diverse political views. They always have. But above all else, they care about Ireland, and they care about Ireland's success and prosperity. They care about Irish unity. We've seen that through the Good Friday Agreement. And they care about Irish freedom. And that's not going to change, no matter what happens. And, we need to, for not only for the people here in Ireland to see this, but we need the Irish diaspora to see too that our leader is going to stand up for us. The consequences of this, like as I say, Trump could just change his mind tomorrow anyway, so I really do think he needs to be strong in how Ireland feels.
There seems to be a view among some out there that, Timmy, as we would expect, obviously Micheál Martin's his party leader, touched on it, that he's experienced at handling these kind of very tricky political engagements. I mean, we saw last year he was the first international leader into the White House, into the Oval Office, following that remarkable dressing down of Volodymyr Zelensky. And I'm sure he, as we all did, had our concerns as to how it would go. Now, there was criticism that you didn't say too much, but I think anyone in his shoes would maybe have taken the same approach. Don't say anything too bad that might risk Donald Trump's ire. Do you agree that he's the right? I suppose he's experienced enough to take the right approach with this, even if he doesn't go, to the extremes that you might want him to in terms of highlighting these issues in front of the cameras. He will get through this meeting without any major disasters.
Well, if you look at what happened in the Dáil on March the 3rd, when Mary Louie asked why will Micheál Martin not speak clearly, he would not name the actions of Israel and the United States as illegal, dangerous and in breach of international law. He wouldn't call out this aggression and name it for what it is. So he can't even talk clearly when he's here. So, why is he shrinking away from stating the obvious? Why will he not speak clearly? So is he the right person? He is our leader at the end of the day, and he's the head of the Irish government, and he has to have influence with world leaders, and he has to set out clearly Ireland's position as a defender of international law and proponents of peace, and that's what should be happening.
Another recent issue, of course, is the concerns about the treatment of Irish citizens and undocumented Irish in the United States. Should that be an issue or a priority issue for the Taoiseach to mention when he meets President Trump tomorrow?
Well, I'm sure the diaspora over there and anyone being treated that way are hoping that is the case. They are hoping that he will stand up. He is, as I said, our leader.
There's also controversy around the possibility of Donald Trump being invited to Ireland and Clare, particularly with the Irish Open set to take place at his Doonbeg Golf Resort. What's your view on that? Do you think it would be a welcome visit? Would it be a boost for the Irish Open if he were to come?
I don't. I think that some very local people will welcome him, but I don't think that the majority of the Irish people will welcome him here. But that remains to be seen if he does come.
Okay, look, we do have to leave it there. Donna, thank you very much for joining us on the show.